Morning. As you know, we like to start on time, which is 9:40, by the way. Just clarifying. So, welcome. We are very happy to have Kristen Gray and alumni, Amy Quincey, Evan, Anna, Kyria. Did I say that right? All right. And they're going to introduce themselves as well. But you know they are here to talk about their experiences when they went to Oman. So I'm going to turn it over to Kristen, and they will, like I say, introduce themselves. So thank you. Welcome.
So I'm also going to do a little welcome. So Kristen Gray, I'm a member of the congregation, I'm retired, worked, past tense, at Hope College, and was just really thrilled in my career to be able to go to the Amana Centre in Muscat, Oman, with students, with my dear friend Amy Quincey, to teach a senior seminar. When we got back in May, this seemed like a really fabulous idea. And then I started getting ready for this, and I thought, oh my gosh, where are the alumni who would be on the panel? Because it's a senior seminar, so we don't have, our students aren't necessarily still on campus. But look at these three fabulous alumni who have joined us. I also want you to be aware that we're going to just speak about one little slice of what the Amana Centre does. The Amana Centre does amazing work, beautiful work, great work, and lots of work. We're going to talk about what it's like for a group to be hosted there and have a cultural kind of shorter immersion experience while we're there. I thought it was appropriate at Hope Church because we support Justin Meyer as one of our mission shares. And I just think it's important to understand, again, this little slice of work that they do there. The other thing I want you to be aware of is I don't claim to be an expert. Do any of you claim to be experts? No, good, clarifying. We have Steve and Jean here who were in Oman for October and November. And I don't see Paul, but Paul Huskenveld grew up, at least for part of his childhood, in Oman. So there are other folks in our congregation who actually have more experience there, but we're going to talk about our experience. That's where we're going to stand today. What else was I going to say? So what I'm inviting you into is just a time of storytelling. We're not going to lecture. We have not written out things. We're going to show some slides because I think it's fun to see some images. They aren't the best images. They're just the images. And we're just going to talk and tell stories, and we hope that you enjoy your time. So now I'm going to ask, would each of you, so this is the model. I'm Kristen Gray. I'm retired from Hope College. And I ended up going to the Amana Centre because my friend Amy said that we needed to do that.
Hello, my name is Evan. Also retired from Hope College, but in the sense that I finished my bachelor's. The reason that I went to the senior seminar for Oman was also because of Amy. I showed up to one of her little informational sessions, and she had me hooked right from the start. I was like, I have to go there. Also try the food there. Yeah.
Hi guys, my name is Anna, and I'm a little bit different than these two because I was on the first trip in 2019, and I can't remember exactly when I first heard about the trip, but was super excited to go to the Middle East for the first time and explore a new culture, learn more, see more, and had a really good group of people to do that with. And I forgot, I am also a graduate of Hope College, and I am now in Grand Rapids in my 4th year in medical school.
I'm Kyria. I graduated from Hope College this past spring, so I was on this trip like 6-ish months ago, and I decided to go to Oman because I looked at the list of things that Hope College had to offer, and I said, where is Oman? And so I was like, I just want to know all about it. So yeah, that was kind of something that just pulled me in and like get the whole experience of what Oman is about.
Good morning. My name is Amy Quincey. I am the Senior Director for the Center for Global Engagement at Hope. And I have had the privilege of traveling with this wonderful group of folks and with Kristen 3 times to Oman now. Hope has a study abroad program in Oman where students can go for a full semester. And as our students have been there through the years, I kept thinking, I want to go. This is a fascinating place to be. And I have some experience in a few other predominantly Muslim countries. And so to me, the Middle East is a fascinating place. And I've just come to love that region of the world. And so when the opportunity presented itself through Justin Myers to go, I said to Kristen, we are going to go. And we actually went the first time through the RCA, through a women's group. So that was how we first went before we then decided to take students along with us. Maybe just really quickly, the course is a senior seminar course. Every Hope student needs to take a senior seminar class in order to graduate. And there are different themes and topics that students can choose to participate in. And this particular course, the focus is engaging the other, who is my neighbor, with a focus on interfaith dialogue and with putting ourselves into a space of maybe not always feeling the most comfortable, perhaps because we are learning and meeting people who have a very different perspective and experience than we do. And so part of our challenge is how we learn from and with others who maybe have a very different worldview and perspective. And so that was the focus of our particular course.
So we're going to look at the question of who is my neighbor from 3 different perspectives: mind, body, and spirit. And for those who can't read the screen, I will read it. For though my faith is not yours, and your faith is not mine, if we are each free to light our own flame, together we can banish some of the darkness of the world. And that's Rabbi Jonathan Sacks. And I'm just reading that for accessibility reasons. So mind. This is where I'm getting the blank stares from the group. Yeah, we had books. So this is an example of part of our schedule while we were there, and you can see on the screen perhaps that we did some adventures, like we went to the Wadi Shab. We'll talk about that in a minute. We had cooking class. We had visits to a fort. We have a Hope College session almost every day. We did study, we did read, we did write, we did put together presentations. Anna's the only one nodding. The other 2 are in total denial that they went through that. We also had speakers who joined us. So my question for the group, I don't know what to do with my hands. So my question for the group is, what do you remember about the readings? Or was there a book that particularly grabbed you, or a speaker, or something along those lines that any of you would like to talk about?
So part of going on the trip was that we had to read 3 books. Can't promise you that we actually read all of them. The one that I did read all the way through was Holy Envy. Yeah, highly recommend this book. So that was, I would say, the first way that this trip started to stretch my mind a little. Even before the trip started, actually. It just to like give a little short synopsis of the book. Like, it's about a woman who found that her faith was a little bit dried up, and she was looking for ways to fill that well again. And she started turning to other religions of the world. and she found that like when she was looking in all these other places in all these other religions, that she was actually learning more about the Christian God in that sense. So I'm not actually like a particularly religious person, but it still had a really great lesson in it, which was like, if we kind of set aside what we know for now, because I still grew up like in a Christian tradition, so like that way of seeing the world still kind of like is a filter on how I view things. So by kind of like trying to actively remove that filter and looking to other traditions to learn more about Christianity, you can kind of start to unravel a lot of the negative biases towards other traditions that may be preventing you from being a good neighbor, like the course is asking us to do, I guess. Yeah, so I'd say that was the kind of the first thing that started to get the gears turning.
Just want to throw out one more book quickly. Oops, sorry. I don't know if you have it in this deck. Allah, the next one. Yeah. It was kind of comparing the two different Abrahamic religions between Christianity and Islam, and a little bit of Judaism is in there as well, I believe, and looking at what ties them together. Because a lot of what we focus on are, okay, we believe this, they believe that, and us versus them, and a lot of the differences, but a lot of this book was then comparing the similarities as well and going, do we pray to the same God? And something like that, which can be a pretty controversial statement. And really just realizing just how much more overlap there is when we focus so much more on the differences.
Yeah, so one of the things that we got to do in our Hope College sessions is scriptural reasoning. So there were members of the community that came and sat around. We all sat in a circle, and we had a passage from the Quran and then a passage from the Bible. And one of the cool things was we got to read it in the Islamic language, right? Arabic, sorry. So someone read it in Arabic, and then they read it in English, and then we read the passage from the Bible, and we kind of just like looked at both of them because they were very similar, similar in the way of the story, but also so many differences. And so just to acknowledge like there are some things the same here, there are some different, and just like the wording of some things, and just how like we could both acknowledge like they were both like holy texts for like Islam and Christianity, but yet there were some similarities, and just it was very cool. It was just very interesting to like, oh, this is what we think, and then someone would give us context as to what we were actually like thinking about. So yeah.
I don't really have anything else to add.
You can keep clicking. Evan is going to click for me because I'm getting lost in the stories. Technical difficulties.
Well, maybe if you do it, it'll work.
Let me try. Up. Well, we're going to keep this slide for now. I'd like to mention just a little bit more about scriptural reasoning. It was something that we do at the center. Friends of the Amana Centre who are Muslim join us. As Kyria said, the texts are read in the original language and then in translation, and that's true of the Quranic passage, but it's also true of the biblical passage. So it's read in either Hebrew or Greek, and then in English. And one of the pieces that I love about scriptural reasoning is each one of us gets to comment on what we see, what we read, and how we understand it. We do not invoke experts. No one is saying this is absolutely exactly what it means. We're able to say, to me, at this point in my life, this image of gate seems very inviting. Or at this point in my life, images of the gate seem very excluding, right? So it's our experience of the text where we are right now. And for me, it was a very freeing form of looking at sacred texts. And I like to do that now with our readings on Sundays. I look at them and think, where am I with this text right now? So again, that kind of holy envy or learning something somewhere else and then bringing it in.
Yeah, so I have something to add to that as well. When you're talking about reading the text in the original languages, sorry. So when you read the text in the original languages, it kind of makes it a lot more obvious, like how intertwined Christianity is with like the American identity. And like when you're reading the texts in Greek or Hebrew, that is immediately cast aside. And so like even just by reading it in a different language, it kind of helps you see like the true meaning of the text that you're reading, instead of like, this is the text that I was reading when I learned it in Sunday school, or this was the text that Americans want us to believe. So like there are Christians is going to be a lot different because their language is different. So that was also another important part of scriptural reasoning, was sort of like detaching the Christian identity from our American identity.
One just like example of that, I don't remember any very specific examples of scriptural reasoning when I personally was there, but I remember being told a story about scriptural reasoning. And Justin Myers was talking about how one of the first times that they were even doing this as a group and bringing people together, they were reading a passage with, oh my gosh, it was like Zacchaeus. I was like, and Jesus inviting him down, saying, "I'm coming over to your house today." And Justin saying that, this one Omani Muslim man said, "Oh, now I get why you think that he is the Son of God." And he was just like, "Wait, what? Why this passage?" Like, yes, but like, why this passage? And just the cultural expectations where you do not invite yourself over. Not even the Sultan can invite themselves over. Only God can. And so for Jesus to invite themselves over, it was one of those moments of, oh, okay, different cultural context brings different meaning to a text.
So you might notice that we're sitting on the floor a lot. We did, I'll just say that. I'm going to just comment on this. The group that went in 2023, we had a fair number of engineers. And so one of the things that the Amana Centre did was set up a time for us at it's actually a Sultan Qaboos University. Sorry, forgot the university up there. We didn't just go to visit the Sultan. It's the university, and it's a technical university. And the house behind this engineer here is 3D printed. So we were able to get into their school buildings, walk through some labs, look at the things that they're working on, and then we got to go out and see the house that they had printed. Was really quite fascinating and a little different. I'm just going to plug that that's the kind of thing that when you are a small group visiting the Amana Centre, they're able to do. When Anna was with us, we had healthcare people. And so we visited someone who was doing both healthcare and kind of a social work type, public health. That's the word I'm looking for, a public health person. And that was also very meaningful. So just that point. Cultural immersion experiences. Who wants to talk about the souk?
Okay, so that picture right there is all the girls on the trip that we were walking around the souk. So every single night that we stayed in Muscat, we would walk down to the souk, which is a night market. And so all the locals have their shops, and you can buy like all these different types of souvenirs. You could also buy dates and like fresh juice, because juice is a big thing there. It's so yummy. And then they can also buy silks and just pretty much anything that you need down in the souk. And so we would walk around and just see what like was the best thing for us to take home. And they also sold clothing. And so it was a lot of fun just to go down at night and just see like the locals interact with each other, and just walk around too. It was a great experience to just people watch. But then the guys got fitted for pistachos, right? So Evan.
Oh yeah. Yeah, there might be a picture. Wait, can you go back actually? Yeah, so the guy, wait. One more forward. Yeah, there we go. The guy on the very right, his name is Muhammad. He was with us for a lot of the trip. A very lovely man. He is wearing a dishdasha. So that's like the traditional garb that they wear in Oman. It's also kind of like a way to signify like I'm an Arab, because Oman has a lot of expats there, so they have like a lot of people from Pakistan and I don't know about India, Bangladesh. So like depending on your culture, you're going to be wearing something different. But so this is like what the Arabs would wear in Oman. And the hat, I forget what the hat is called. But the interesting thing about the hat is that like the way that it's folded is kind of like a way to style it. So it doesn't actually come like that. It looks more like a dome, but the way that you fold it can make it look like that cylinder shape. And also with the dishdasha, like that's also like a style statement. So like it comes in white, or I saw some people had green ones, and that it's maybe a little bit hard to see, but the little thing coming down from his neck, the tassel thing, that was also a place where the men would put perfume. So perfume was also a big part of the culture there. So there might be a picture of me wearing a dishdasha in here. Yeah, so you'll be able to see it later. Just a little foreshadowing.
So next we're going to talk about who's my neighbor and learning that through body. And I think Evan's already kind of alluded that there were dishdasha involved at one point. But I'm going to ask Kyria to talk about this picture.
Okay, so I wasn't there. I had decided not to go, but there was someone that we met on the plane ride over to Oman that we started talking, and he lived in Muscat. He was home for a break, and he invited our group to come play soccer with him and his friends. And so my friends went, and they went to go play soccer. There were like 5 or 6 of them, so it wasn't all like one car. And so he grabbed all of his friends, and they all like swung by the Amana Centre to pick them up and go play soccer. And I know that they had so much fun. The thing was a lot of people like didn't know how to play soccer, but that didn't matter. They absolutely just played with whatever they had a bunch of fun. And then afterwards they went and like picked them up food, like a late night snack, and they were just so hospitable and welcoming. And that was kind of like a similarity, just to be able to play soccer.
So also that was the first time that people did things with them. The second time, I think I was there for the second time. We hung out with that group. The second time, it kind of showed like how hospitable, or how hospitality was such an important part of the culture in Oman. So they brought us out to a park there. It was probably like the only park with grass there because you just have to water it 24/7. Not the most economical, but regardless, they brought us out there and they laid out like a whole spread of fruits, and they brewed karak, which is kind of like a chai. I don't exactly know what makes it different, but it's kind of like chai. And the whole point of bringing us there was that they were going to serve us food, and they're like, here, eat the food, and if you're full, keep eating, because you have no choice but to keep eating. So like food is a really important part of the culture there, and that's kind of the way that they show their hospitality there. And so it was really strange to us to like meet a group of people and have them like almost like shower us with gifts. Like it could have also been because we were foreigners and they're like, we really want to make a good impression. But I don't think that was the case, because that was how it was with pretty much everyone that we met there. For instance, when we went to a cooking class, which I think we'll also talk about later. The first thing that they offered us was dates and coffee, and a special drink. I forget what it was made of. Tamarind. It was made out of tamarind, which is really great for people almost getting heat stroke. It's really hot there. It was like 80 degrees when we stepped off the plane at midnight. So that should give you a good idea of what it's like at high noon. Yeah, but food was a really important part of the culture there. It was very delicious, and the people are going to be so hospitable to you if you ever decide to go there.
I won't speak so much about food, but there are a couple things when I think about the body and being in Oman that I want to share with you. One is, as Evan said, it is incredibly hot in the month of May. It's on average 109 to 115 degrees during the day. So many of our activities were actually in the mornings or at night. And during the day, we would rest. We would be in the Amana Centre in the AC, and we'd be drinking a lot of water and really trying to just stay cool. On the first morning in 2023, when we went on this trip, we went on this particular hike, and it's literally within walking distance from the Amana Centre. So if you can look at how arid and mountainous it is, this is literally the backyard of the Amana Centre. That first morning, we started out at about 8:30, 9 in the morning for this hike. And halfway through, I thought I was going to die. It got so incredibly hot right away. And Kristen and I on this third trip knew that we would be carrying extra electrolytes and water with us. And I still felt like I didn't have enough liquid in me. And there were a couple times, I don't know if the students really knew this or not, but I thought I was going to literally pass out in the heat and on this particular hike going up. And I think for me, the concept of water, and in the Bible it talks about living water, took on a whole new meaning to me, that water is life. Right? We have to stay hydrated, we have to be plugged in, and I think scripturally, in my faith, that's something that I often come back to, is where am I finding the living water, and what does that look like in my life at this particular point? We're in the Wadi Shab in this particular picture, and again, it is after a long hike that you find these pockets of water where you then just want to immerse yourself into it fully and just let it soak through your entire pore of your body. With that, I'm going to share one more story that the first time we took students was during Ramadan in 2019, and we had the chance to go to the Grand Mosque, and one of our favorite ladies, Naima, works in the Grand Mosque there, and we had a chance to talk with them a little bit about what it means to practice Ramadan and to break the day with iftar, which is where you typically break your fast with a date, and then you have a meal. And one of the students, I don't remember who it was, asked Naima what it's like to practice Ramadan. And she gave a really profound response that has sat with me to this day. And she said, you know, she said, for us, or for her, she said, imagine wandering in the desert for 11 months of the year. And you could see again how arid Oman is, the desert is there, how hot it is. If you're wandering in the desert for 11 months, and then you come upon an oasis that is filled with green, lush plants, with water, with shade, she equated that to being to her practicing Ramadan, that she is going through life for 11 months of the year, but in that month when she comes and rests in the oasis during that month of Ramadan, it is like living water, it is like shade, it is like resting. And again, it was very profound to me. For me personally, I thought a lot about what fasting means. And for me in my tradition and the way I grew up, fasting was often associated with asking God for something, right? I set aside this time and I want to really seek God's will for my life or this particular question. And instead, it reframed fasting for me as communion with God, right? Like, what does it mean to just soak in the oasis of God? And so, again, I think that's one piece that really kind of stands out for me in terms of like reframing what living water really means when I think about the desert.
So I'm going to connect the book Holy Envy and these pictures. On the left is the early hike that's just outside of Mutra. On the right is Jebel Shams, and that is the Grand Canyon of Oman. So this is a huge canyon. The first time Amy and I were there, she mentioned the second time it was Ramadan. The first time we were there for Ash Wednesday. We were there for the beginning of Lent. And we went up to Jebel Sham, and I'm a slow person. And so the students had hiked ahead, and I was hiking by myself. And I remember thinking, because you're looking at these bushes with these big thorns, and I remember thinking, this is what the Bible means when it says the wilderness. I'm from Minnesota. Wilderness is a pine forest with a nice lake, shade and water. I was hot. I was drinking as much water as I could. I knew Justin had more water ahead of me on the hike, and that when he circled back, I would refill my bottles and drink more water. But how different those passages of Scripture have been for me since then. And David, sits next to me in church. I wept every Sunday after we got back. We would be reading the passages, and I just had this different image of the struggle, of the road, of the wilderness, just overwhelming to me. And so I think this place is pretty special for some of us because of some of those reasons. Should we move on? Oh, Amy.
Sorry, one more quick thought. When I think about body, right, like that's the section that we're in right now. I also think about being in an environment where you hear a call of prayer, right? So hearing the call of prayer 5 times a day. And where the Amana Centre sits, you hear it actually from about 5 different mosques, coming from different ways, and they're always about 2 seconds off from each other, and so you hear it. But again, that reminder to be in prayer, to calling community together, right? To come together and to seek God's will for your life in that particular moment and to surrender yourself. It's actually quite beautiful to hear it. And when I am there, it does give me great pause to just kind of slow myself down long enough to say, oh, okay, what am I doing in this moment that I can be mindful of my relationship with God as well. But I find that call to prayer very, very beautiful, and it's very comforting in many ways, even though I know what the translation is for the call of prayer, but after a while it becomes a part of your rhythm and your day. And again, we have church bells, but not even so much here in Holland anymore, right? We hear it on occasion. But I think that's, again, just one more part of the body as we experience faith that I'm mindful of when I'm there.
So I did ask like what the call of prayer was, and it kept saying like over and over, like God is all knowing, He is great, like He knows like all things, He's mighty and magnificent. And so they'd say that multiple times in this call to prayer in Arabic. And so that was just kind of cool too, because having the knowledge of like that's what they're saying 5 times a day is just like, oh, like stop and pause and like for myself, like think like you're right, like God is great, like God is almighty. And so just that sound 5 times a day was a good reminder.
Not sure if this fits more in the spirit section or anything, but I was there in 2019, so I was there during Ramadan, and one of the days we fasted, and a lot of the days when we were there, we, again, like we said, need to hydrate. We were just very mindful to be respectful and like kind of chugging water when we were like behind closed doors, away from people, not drinking in front of somebody who's very thirsty, and trying to be mindful. But then one day we decided, no, we're here, want to practice alongside people, and then trying to look like, what would this fast look like from a Christian perspective? And ended up with that call to prayer, just saying the Lord's Prayer 5 times a day and realizing we don't have that type of practice typically, and that level of involvement in your daily life, and that constant reminder. And that was just a really powerful moment for me of even just this one day where people are doing this for a whole month, and just that one day like takes a lot out of you but also gives a lot to you. And I'd highly encourage, if anybody's just in an environment where that's possible for them, just a day during Ramadan, to try that out and see what that might look like for your life. Highly encourage it. And then also it was something that kind of stuck with me where not so much the fasting part, but the reminder for prayer. I just got back from 2 months in Malawi, and there's a call to prayer as well. And so like every time, it's not 99% Muslim in Malawi, but there's enough percentage where there was a mosque nearby and we would hear the sound. And just every time hearing that, reminding like, okay, quick Lord's Prayer and then keep doing what you're doing. And just having that little break in the day and that reminder was very meaningful for me.
So now we're on to spirit. And I'm going to ask if we would maybe talk, I think we've talked a lot about holy envy, but if anybody's got another comment they want to make about that. What surprised you about Islam? Anything there? And I'm going to pull up, I've got some pictures of the mosque, so that's what I'm going to pull up.
I don't really know. Maybe it'll come up later, something that surprised me. There definitely was something, I just can't remember it. But a conversation that I remember from maybe like the first day that I was there in Oman was a conversation with one of the guys who worked there. I think his name was Jeff. Yeah, a guy named Jeff there. We were talking about like, why is it kind of like that? There's this idea that like Christians, Jews, and Muslims worship a different God. Or in some cases, like some people believe that Christians and Jews worship the same God, but Muslims don't. So the conversation like kind of went along the lines of like, well, like if God is all powerful and like you can't, and if you can't really understand like the infinity of God, then like how are we even supposed to know that they worship the same God or not? And the answer to that question is like, well, yes, they kind of worship the same God, but also no, because like we can't understand the true nature of God. And so like that question was so important because like asking who is my neighbor in the context of like being a Christian or someone who's raised in a Christian tradition, it kind of forces you to ask the question like, where is this idea of like Muslims worshiping a different God coming from? And then it started to like open up a whole new avenue of questions of like, well, like, does that come from the way that they're portrayed in media? How do people talk about Muslims in a day-to-day life? And over the course of that trip, I kind of realized like, yeah, like there's kind of almost like this, there's like built-in assumptions when people talk about Muslims sometimes in media or in everyday conversation that like we kind of just like understand but have yet to unravel those. And part of asking that question is trying to unravel like what are the assumptions that I have about people who practice Islam. And one of those is that they worship a different God or that the God is fundamentally different. And so like that makes it really easy to be prejudiced against them if you suddenly think like, oh, well, they live in a different side of the world, so they must worship a different God.
So my presentation for the end of my senior seminar was I had asked the missionaries who have been in Oman for a very long time, what was one thing in the Islamic religion that you wish Christians would adopt? And so that's kind of in similarity of holy envy of just having like acknowledging and liking that Islams have done this specific thing and hoping for it in Christianity. And so some of the answers were like praying communally, so like just everyone dropping what they're doing and going to a church and praying for 20 minutes and telling the truth. That was a big thing. I think in when we were there, they were just very like straight out forward with everything in any question that we had. And they Justin Myers had actually said daily morning prayer together, just like early in the morning before work, like anyone at any denomination could just come together and just have 20 minutes of prayer before the start of the day. And so I just found that very interesting, just because it's really cool to think, if you think about it, like that's what they do, and for us to have something like that is holy envy, right? So
excuse me, a little bit different where yes, all of these major assumptions, cultural things, but just this one little thing. When we're at the Grand Mosque, your women are supposed to wear a hijab, cover their head just out of respect. And it's not something that's like, oh no, you must do this, must cover it, but just like a show of respect. And when we were there, the you girls and I, we had like kind of struggled to put it on, like trying to figure out like, okay, how do we balance this, not have it be the scarf falling off, and kind of it worked. Like we got our hair covered, got all the bases covered, But when we were talking with this woman, Naima, that Amy had mentioned, she was incredibly gracious and showed us how to put it on correctly. And I wish I had thought to show the before and after photos and how to put it right. And just that moment of just almost like motherly tenderness of, okay, I'm getting my girls dressed. And that's cross-cultural. That's no matter what religion you're coming from, what culture you're coming from, that moment of just kind of showing you, okay, here's how you do this. Okay, I'm going to put this right. And also, it stayed on a lot better after that. But just having that moment together. And then kind of on the flip side, just recently when I was in Malawi, there was a resident who was Muslim, and chatting with her there, I had just complimented on her hijab, and she was taken aback that I just knew the word hijab. And so there's a very low bar. Just throwing that out there for understanding somebody else's religion, somebody else's culture, and just having even just that background tied together just blew me away of, okay, how are we showing hospitality if that's the expectation? And after all the hospitality we've been shown, and what can I do in my daily life? Just things to think about.
So I'm mindful of the time, and I know that this is a group that likes to ask questions. I've been told to save time. These are a couple of pictures of the Grand Mosque. There's no way to explain the scope of what that worship space is like, but it's pretty awe-inspiring. Here are our students, again, being mindful and being culturally sensitive, so covering, and so our men did get distasha, which I was very what an inspiring thing, right? If you look at the silhouette that they make, and you look at a woman in an abaya, it's the same silhouette. So I think we want to talk a lot about, we want to project some of our own sexism onto different cultures. I found that very interesting, that there is this, the modesty is that I don't highlight my own body. And that was true for men as well as for women. I really appreciated that. I'm going to click here. We also were able to attend churches, plural, when we were in Oman. There are congregations that worship. They are both expats and Omani, wonderful spaces. And what's fascinating to me is kind of this forced ecumenicism. They share space. And so you don't get to say the Catholics are over there and the Protestants are over here. Y'all are together. And so that was a kind of a fun thing to note. On your left is the contemporary service, so praise band. Very much what you might find here in some spaces, and then also traditional services. And I feel like I should turn this over to Steve and Jean, but this is, again, the Protestant church. And if I'm remembering, the stained glass window is what you see when you're baptized. Yes? No? Oh. Okay. Maybe. Oh, it is. Amy is saying yes. So there's a baptism font, huge font, and the window is directly above that.
I just wanted to say a quick little thing about forced ecumenism. How do you say it? Ecumenism. I always think there's more syllables in that word. The idea of different denominations for Muslims is almost strange, and they will all worship together. The idea of going to a Christian, Catholic, Protestant, they're kind of that's really weird because we are all worshiping the same God. So why are we going to different churches? So an interesting thing about like the forced ecumenism is that the Christians and Catholics there are like forced to think the same thing. Like, why do we have so many different denominations? In the US, it's really easy to do that because when people don't like what they hear at church, they can just go a block over and build a new one. But in Oman, the government was in charge of where the worship spaces could be, and so it forced people to like almost incubate together.
And I heard some very interesting dynamics just being like, okay, you have Orthodox here, Catholics here, Christian Reformed here, RCA here, but everybody's like kind of mismatched together. But you also have like, okay, like Mormons here. How do Mormons and Orthodox interact together? How do Protestants and Catholics interact together? And like just this whole like mismatch of like who even considers another a Christian or not. And this whole conversation that takes place that's forced to take place because you have to work together. If you're being like, okay, you're here at 10 a.m., you're here at noon, like how do you share space? How do you fit in different religious celebrations on the same day? You have to be in conversation with each other, which is pretty interesting to watch.
So one of my favorite parts was worship, and so we went to the church, and Muslims worship on Fridays. So in Oman, Friday is the day of worship, which was pretty cool. And so we went in, and like as we said, like Oman is like full of like not only just Omanis but expats and people from all other countries. And so we were able to worship with people from all other countries, which was so cool because you hear like, oh, there are Christians all over the world, but yet here I was in Oman with people from all other countries, and we were singing Lord, I lift your name on high, which like is just such a simple song but such a great song. And so that kind of really just like, oh wait, like there are Christians all over the world, and I am on the other side of the world worshiping. And so that was just a great like wow, like light bulb moment of wow, God is so cool.
So I'm gonna tell one more story, and then we'll do Q&A. So the picture on your right of the cars, the students didn't necessarily ever see this photo. I don't think they knew that this photo happened. We had been in Oman about 24 hours when this group of young men came to the gate. We had met one of them on the airplane. They were going to take our students away. I am not a very trusting person. Those are the cars. We have the license plates numbers. Amy looked, and they introduced themselves. They were lovely. I'm taking pictures, and Amy says, "What are you doing?" I said, "I'm getting the license plate numbers." I didn't need to fear. They were lovely. They came back. And had dinner with us at the Amana Centre. They hosted our students again. It was lovely. That for me was a pretty strong lesson this last trip, right? That my fears and my didn't need to be that high. I could have a little faith that we were going to be okay. So now, I've got some more fun pictures that we're just going to randomly put up. But what questions do you have for us? And if you don't, we'll keep telling stories.
I did one of these short-term things in 1976. I subsequently spent 39 years in Taiwan. Thank you for risking.
There are different varieties of Islam. Is this Sunni Muslim?
So there are different varieties. There's tends to be like Sunni, Shia, and then Abadi. And to say that you're Abadi tends to mean you are from Oman. And what's really cool about that is they can also act as the peacemakers and be a place to have conversations because they're not either Sunni or Shia, and kind of able to bridge that gap between and be able to have conversations, which I thought was really cool and special about Oman. Yeah.
Yeah, so it's also probably important to mention that the Ibadis are a minority, and so it's a little bit strange for a minority religion to be in charge of a country, because the Sultan is like the religious king. He's not just a king, he's the religious king. So to have that be Ibadi is a strange position. Yeah, minority in all of Islam, not just the country.
I can remember having conversations with students lamenting not taking time to have personal devotions by themselves. Can you say a little bit about the distinction between we worship as a community, we worship as a body of faith, over against I worship all by myself, praying for what I want in my closet where no one can see me pray? So I know there's that biblical piece to it, but there's this really strong American sense that the only devotions that count are the ones that I do by myself, or I get extra bonus points for. Was over against praying in community. Have you wrestled with that or come to any new insights having been in that community?
Yeah, my part of my holy envy, particularly during Ramadan, was watching people run to the mosque to pray. Can you imagine if we rang church bells and stores closed? We're in a shop and they're like, no, we have to go now. They close the shop and run. That's such an image to me, right? That we are together. That feels very different to me, and I don't know. I still really value my personal time, Dawn. But for me, that feeling of we're moving together was such a different thing. I'm gonna give this back to Amy.
I think that's a really interesting question, right? I think, again, as you said, U.S. society, our cultural values are very much tied to individualism. And many of our experience was in a very collectivist society, right? And I agree. I think there is something about being in community and doing things together that when there's greater accountability in my actions and more people maybe know what is going on in my life as well, right? As opposed to hiding away certain parts or addressing it as an individual in my prayer life. And I agree. There's an element of holy envy in the midst of doing life together. I also think that in my experience in Oman and a couple other places that faith is not in isolation. And I find that here in the U.S., faith is very much a very private thing, right? Like my students sometimes talk about, like when they come back from study abroad from a semester, that it was harder sometimes for them to connect with the host culture because their faith was so private to them in this context. And so I think, again, there's a lot to be learned in terms of how do we do our faith with others? How do we do our faith walk with others? And celebrating that, allowing for the accountability, allowing for people to be a part of that journey as opposed to kind of in isolation.
I just want to say that's a really interesting observation. The word religion, the root word is religio, which means to bind together. Religion is spirituality practiced in community rather than as individuals. And I've never thought about this before, but maybe in terms of interfaith dialogue, part of what the Muslim world has to teach us is the value of spirituality practiced not individually in one's closet, but in community, religio.
Hi, I'm Jane Dickey. I've been thinking about this and thinking about how good it is that you went with open minds and ready to value and appreciate the things that you were seeing. Right now, in our global conflicts, I am terrified of theocracies. I think the United States has a strong push toward Christian nationalism. Is America a Christian nation? I worry when God is linked with any political, directly with only one. It's me and God, and we know what you need to do. And I see it in Iran, I see it in, and I don't know enough about Oman. I see it in Israel right now, where the far right Jewish folk have control of the government. And I wonder if there was any thought, or if you thought about what it meant when the head is both the political head and the Godhead.
Yeah, it was also strange. I also was thinking that when I was there, like, it's really strange that the person who's in charge of this country is also like the almost like religious figurehead. Another interesting thing though about living there is there's almost like this understanding that the king is actually not like that. I remember, I think it was Muhammad that said, like, or actually it might have been Justin, that said, like, you can tell that, like, the Sultan and the officials, like, are not as religious as people because of the posture that they take when they pray. And so it was just a little bit different there, because, like, it was kind of like a theocracy, but, like, there was almost like this understanding that, like, it kind of wasn't either. Yeah, that's the most I can say on that.
I'm going to watch Amy, because one of the things I remember being told is Oman has not had a radicalization of the people, right, from the mosques. And that is in part because the Department of Religion provides the Friday message. And so freedom and safety, freedom and security, right, it's different. They decided that we will do the message. And by the way, the folks that would be reading that message are not necessarily deeply theologically trained, right? So you might be out in a very small mosque, and I'm someone who reads really well. And so I will be the one that will be, I recite well, I read well, I'm giving that message, but the text is given from the Department of Religion. And so they have not had a radicalization in terms of some of the Hamas, I'm going to draw blanks on other groups, people leaving Oman to go fight. That really has not, it's happened with a few people, and those folks have come back. So it's a very different, but it's all about control, Jane. I'd love to talk more with you about that, but it's a very different place. Mm-hmm.
Thank you. Really appreciate you coming today. This has been excellent. Thank you. You know, these people came all the way, like, from Detroit, Grand Rapids, etc., to be with us today. So we are very appreciative of your taking the time and coming and sharing with us today. It's really important. Thank you. Thank you. And I'll say quickly, next week, Barbara Van Horsen from the Momentum Center will be here to talk about the Momentum Center. You know, they've had some funding challenges from our Board of Commissioners. Barbara will be here to talk about the vision and mission of the Momentum Center. And the next week, she and a group of us will also be talking about the civil rights road trip that the Momentum Center sponsors. And I want to just alert you that the next trip is coming up April 22 to 24. There's a poster in the gathering area about it, but there are only 4 spots left. So if you were thinking about it, I suggest that you don't wait till the 17th for our presentation, but you contact the Momentum Center or Barbara this week, because those 4 spots are probably going to go quickly. So I just wanted to, Barbara let me know. She said, I don't know if they'll be ready by the 7th, if there are any be left by the 17th. So alert you to that. So please join us again next week, and thank you very much for coming today. Thank you.